Welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn. This is Jen, BalloonCoach Joette's virtual assistant for the last 10 years. So many of you already know me, but Joette is unable to be on today. So if you have questions outside of the scope of today's conversation, just know that you can go to the BalloonCoach.com website to schedule a free 10-minute session with her or email joette@BalloonCoach.com. Many of you already know our speakers today, and we just learned they haven't done this together before, but many of you already know them. So Nicole of Let Nicole Help and Elizabeth of Fiore Accounting and Tax Services. And I will turn it over to the two of you to take us away.
Awesome. Just making sure all my stuff is on Do Not Disturb. So Nicole and I are talking about using 17 hats reporting to know your numbers. We figured this was an interesting topic that we haven't covered before. She tends to cover all things 17 hats, and I tend to cover knowing your numbers. And so we felt like this would be a cool thing to do together, especially since so many users have 17 hats. So a little bit about me. I am an IRS enrolled agent. What that means is I'm federally licensed tax practitioner, and we specialize in taxation and have unlimited rights to represent taxpayers before the IRS. All of that to say, we have balloon artist clients all over the country. We work on the bookkeeping side, taxes side, payroll, training. And my absolute favorite thing, if you ever see me in the wild, is talking business. So feel free to always talk my ear off.
And hi, I'm Nicole of Let Nicole Help. A few things about me is that I'm a trusted 17 Hats marketplace service provider. So I don't work for them. A lot of people think I do, but I'm just a private service provider, but now trusted in the 17 Hats marketplace as well. I've been to Summit twice, and I'll be at Virtual Summit this year as well. Been to other balloon industry events and recognizing some names and faces here online. The majority of my clients are also balloon businesses, and I just love all things systems and streamlining. So I'm here for it all.
Cool. That's a good point. I will also be at the virtual summit this year as well. Okay, so we have some slides that we're gonna go through, and then we're gonna jump into 17 hats after. But we wanted to kind of give you some idea of where you can find some of these things, right? So there's several reports, but in my opinion, there's 4 that are really helpful in understanding your numbers. Those 4 reports are the profit and loss report, the product sales report, the client sales report, and the sales tax report. And the way that you find those is if you go into the bookkeeping in the left-hand column, and then on the right side of the screen, you're going to see this little reports drop down. And so if you click on that, these options will pop up, and you'll be able to access those individual reports. Now, Nicole has all sorts of information on like how to make sure that the information that is in those reports is really valuable information. And we'll go through that throughout the slides. But know that just with anything, whether you're using QuickBooks, whether you're using 17 hats, the quality of the information that you put into the system is going to be representative of the quality of information that you get out of the system, right? So if you're using 17 hats, but then you're also not invoicing and getting stuff through Venmo and something through PayPal, and none of that is going to be reflected in these reports that are outside of 17 hats. So just to keep that in mind. So the first report that I think is super, super helpful is the profit and loss report. And even if you don't use the QuickBooks functionality, or excuse me, the expenses functionality in 17 hats, you can still use this report to get your top line sales. So they have a quick select, so you can just do like last year, so you can see, or last month or quarter, etc. But this is going to give you your sales number before any expenses, before any cost of goods. that you've invoiced through 17 Hats. So again, if you're invoicing here, there, and everywhere, it's not going to capture all of that. Another good reason to like streamline your process, and Nicole can speak to that as well. But this will give you that main number. Now, why this number matters, or why it makes a difference, is because without that top line sales number, it's really hard to figure out anything else related to your profitability, right? You need that starting point of like, what is coming in the door? And you want to track that regularly. Now, top line sales isn't everything, right? Like we hear people be like, oh, I did 6 figures, or I'm at $500,000 or $1 million. So it's not the be all end all, because it doesn't say how much money you put in your pocket. It doesn't say, how profitable your business is, but it is the starting point for figuring out those other things. Nicole?
Yeah, and then so I would just add that to even get more out of this P&L report is in 17 Hats, you can actually assign each of your products and services to an income category, so that the profit and loss is giving you the sales, the top line sales, but also you can break it down per category so that you can see what aspects of your business are bringing in the most. So that's just like a next level type of ability there. And then again, Elizabeth mentioned that even if you're not recording expenses, you can get a lot out of this report, but a lot of people don't even know that you can record expenses in 17 Hats. So you can record them manually, of course, or you can even sync in bank accounts to just categorize your expenses. So that will then give you the full picture of the P&L, profit and loss. So.
And that's very similar to what happens when you connect your bank accounts into QuickBooks. So sometimes people say like, do I need to do both? Can I have one versus the other? My recommendation from the money side is under 50,000 in top line sales, you can do whatever makes it easier for you. Whatever, whether that's 17 Hats, a spreadsheet, whatever works. Once you either start buying a vehicle or go above that 50,000 in top line sales, I would recommend doing that expense tracking in QuickBooks. So, Nicole and I can speak to this at another time, but there is a QuickBooks 17 Hat connection that actually works really well. And so it'll bring in all of the invoice information into QuickBooks, and then you can pull those complete reports with the sales and the expenses within QuickBooks. But I think that's a good rule of thumb, is if you're under 50,000, you could comfortably use 17 Hats, especially if you're already paying for the software to track your expenses, as long as you're doing it consistently.
And another thing I forgot to put in here as a tip or just note is recently in the last couple of months, 17 Hats is actually giving you transaction lines for the processing fees, the Stripe processing fees. So that's also done for you now in 17 Hats.
Oh, that's helpful. That's good to know. Okay. The second report that I think is super helpful is the product sales report. What this tells you is it'll tell you every single product that has been in your invoices that you've sold. It'll tell you how many of that item you sold. It'll tell you, it'll have a little description of what it was, and then it'll give you the average price that you charge. So it'll take all of the different prices that you had and average it out based on the number of times you invoiced that specific product. Now, the reason I love this report is because you can very quickly figure out what your best sellers are, right? So you can take this report. There's no way to export it, but you can copy it and drop it into an Excel spreadsheet so that then you can manipulate the report. But you can see what your, maybe top 10 items that you sell are. You can see if your discounting is throwing off your average product price a whole lot. You can make sure that you're pricing for profit by looking at all of those items together. So I think this is something that you should look at least quarterly. to have an idea of what it is that you're truly selling. And often when we go through these lists with clients, they're generally surprised at what their best sellers actually are compared to maybe what they think they are. So I think this is a really helpful tool.
And then what I would just add to this product sales report is that you're going to get the most out of it, and it's going to be easiest to read if you're using a consistent naming convention in your products. So what comes to mind is I'll see people who, it's so easy, just save this item for next time, right? When you're invoicing. But then sometimes if you're saying, if you're billing for a classic column and you put the theme in the name of it, and then next time it's the same classic column, but it's a different theme and it's the same price. Now that's two products that should be on the same line in this product sales report, but they're not combined because they have the different theme names. So try to keep all of the like theme related details if they're not changing the price. Try to keep that in your product description and just kind of use a consistent naming convention so that this product sales report is easiest to read.
I love that advice. And that also, if you're using QuickBooks, that information transfers over into QuickBooks. So if you're creating a new product every time, those will also be all over the place in QuickBooks. So I fully support that tip. And then I would say try to think of it as your products in categories, right? So maybe the classic balloon arch, you have that in just the different sizes that you offer, but it's the same product every time. And then you're only changing the theme and colors and all of that in the description, just like Nicole said. And then when you pull up this report, all of that information will be aggregated into that one line item. So absolutely. And then this report, the client sales report, this is another one that I would recommend doing at least once a year. And basically what you can tell from this report is you can see who your top clients are. And I think it's important to know who your top clients are by a variety of categories, right? So you want to know maybe how many times a client has used your services in the last year, and then what their total spend was. So it'll tell you the number of invoices for that specific client, as well as how much they have spent in total with you in the past year. So sometimes those two things can be different, right? Maybe you had one giant client and it's just one invoice and it's just once a year, and maybe they're your top client. But maybe you have another client that works with you 4 times a year and they're actually spending more total than that one major client. So that is really important information for you to know as you're trying to figure out, who are the people that you should be catering to, right? Like who are the people that maybe you need to follow up with? What are the things that can make or break your top line sales for the year?
Yeah, and my little tip there is to, do what Elizabeth said. Do what Elizabeth said. Look at it once a year and, consider if there's some kind of token of appreciation. I mean, an email or just a thank you note, or maybe it's an actual gift that's not, dipping too much into your profit. But is there a way that you can just appreciate these people to hopefully encourage repeat business, that you are the balloon decorator for them, and just keep that business going, because that's of course easier to get than new business. So
yeah, I love that tip. And also think about if you know who your big time clients were for the past year or 2 years, you know who you need to try to get on the books for next year, right? So maybe they get first billing, first right of refusal for like those major dates, or you want to try to schedule their stuff before you fill it in with other clients, to really help secure that relationship. So you know who to prioritize. And then, of course, what does it all mean? And this is really a glossary. I'm not going to go through line by line on all of these, because if you've heard me talk, you probably know some of this already. But really it's just more of like, what does each of these things mean, right? Top line sales, or total sales is just what is the money that you've collected before any expenses, before any cost of goods, just how much money have you collected? Net income in the business is essentially your profit after cost of goods and after expenses. So that is where your starting point for taxes happens, is with that net income. And then owner's compensation, if you've heard that thrown around, it just means anything that goes into your pocket as an owner of the business. And it doesn't necessarily have to be cash. It could be things that the business pays for that benefits you personally, right? So if you get reimbursed for mileage, or if you your business pays for your health insurance, anything like that, all of that gets included into owner's compensation, because it helps paint a clearer picture of exactly what the business is providing for you personally. Cost of goods sold. So these are direct costs that are associated with a sale. So these are going to be like balloons, helium, any supplies and materials that go into creating the product. The best way to think about this is if you didn't have any sales tomorrow, would you still need any of these items? Right? And if the answer is that you don't need the items, then that means they're cost of goods. If the answer is yes, you need them just for existing, then they're not cost of goods. They're going to be overhead. And operating expenses are overhead, as that's another word for overhead. That's going to be rent, utilities, marketing, insurance, accounting services, payroll, all of those things that you have to pay whether or not you make a single sale. And then of course there's taxes, both state and local, and sales tax as well. So I've covered these profitability formulas in the past, but now that you have, where to find some of these things in 17 Hats, you can plug these numbers in to see this information, right? So now using those reports, you can see what your total sales were using the profit and loss statement. And then using your client sales report, you know how many invoices you sent out in that same time frame. And so now you can figure out what your average sale is based on those two reports. If you are tracking your expenses in 17 Hats, you'll be able to figure out your net income, so after expenses, and then you can divide that by the total sales. So that's going to be your top line sales number. And then for owner pay, again, you can figure out what you're paying yourself in owner's compensation, kind of as globally, like I said, and divide that by your top line sales and get a percentage for owner pay. And so this percentage is going to be similar but different to your profitability. It's going to give you a perspective of how much overall are you putting in your pocket. And so you can very easily pull that information from these reports that we just went through and plug them into these formulas. And now you have really reliable performance indicators that you can kind of track over time. And then again, this is just kind of what you do with it. So you want to look at it monthly or quarterly, at least once a year, if nothing else, so that you can use this data to help you better manage the business, right? So this is not going to give you like information that's out of nowhere. This is just going to help you kind of do a temperature check each month of what's going on in the business. And then we're going to jump into 17 Hats.
Let's see if I can question to share. And I will share my test 17 Hats account. And that is Maybe.
And then if anybody has any questions, if you want to put them in the chat, I can flag Nicole down while she shows us around.
So this is just my dashboard. Is it sharing yet?
It is. Yep.
Okay. So the reports we were talking about are over here in bookkeeping and then reports. So first you can see all the transactions. Again, this being my test account, we're not going to see much, but you would also see the Stripe processing fees are now recording here, and you can filter the transactions. But to get to the reports, if we go to profit and loss as the first one we talked about, and here's that quick select. So I'll say last year. So now you can see it's got my total income. Oops. Total income broken down into my income categories. My cost of goods sold, which gives me profit, minus expenses, or net profit loss. You can even show transactions here if that would be helpful to you. Of course, that could
be a great feature.
A lot. Yeah. But then, even your expenses and your costs, well, your expenses, I should say, are categorized here as a travel expense. And then all the other types of expenses that you may be using to categorize. But here is how the report kind of works with the quick select, or select your own time frame. And then you can see those big numbers with total income, cost of goods sold, etc. So this is a report for last year. And actually a newer thing is you can actually export.
Oh, love that.
Yes. So that just gives you an opportunity to get a CSV. That's a fairly new thing.
Cool.
But right, then you can get it in a spreadsheet and do even further things. So that is a look at profit and loss. As you can see, there's even import and export. I think the export is the IIF file or whatever the QuickBooks file type is. But the next report then is product sales. So here we can see how the quantity, they're being displayed in order of quantity sold, and total price, average price. So this is where Elizabeth mentioned that you can see, are you pricing correctly? As you see that average price for any item, is that what you want to be charging?
Again, and it helps you realize too, if you're maybe like heavily discounting something every time, and it starts to really bring your average down, maybe it's a good opportunity to see if that out the door price is still pricing for profit, or if maybe you need to adjust your pricing in general, right? Like maybe the market around you says, I need to be at this price in order to keep these sales, but then you can also work backwards to make sure that what you're putting into that item is equivalent to the price that you're selling it at, right? Like don't sell a $200 garland for $150 just because that's the market price. Sell a $150 garland for $150.
And the last report, or well, actually, sorry, two more. Client sales. Again, if I filter to last year, this will be organized or listed in terms of the amount they paid. So it happens to be that this client was also 3 invoices, which is more than one, of course, but the order actually is based on amount collected, amount paid to you. So this is where then you can come to see your top clients per whichever time frame you're looking at. Export, bank as necessary. The other tax or report that I think, Elizabeth, you started to mention was the sales tax report. And so we can see that here when you've applied and entered your tax rates in 17 Hats and you properly charge tax, for your different physical goods, rental items, your services, however that works out in your state. I'm not even going to try to explain that anymore because Elizabeth's here. She But when you're applying tax appropriately to the right service area and all that, that's all going to be broken down here in the sales tax report as well.
And this is a really helpful report if you're filing your own sales tax, or if you're having somebody else, if you're paying for them to file it for you. Also, it goes back to if you have a CRM, you want to make sure all of your invoices are going through one system, right? So that these reports, especially the sales tax report, can be accurate for what you've collected and what needs to be paid for that time period. I will say I love 17 Hats reports, and I find that they're the easiest to use out of the ones that I've seen in various different CRMs. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to team up on this, is because I'm like, yay, these reports are awesome. They give you so much information. But it's important that you guys understand that there's limitations too, right? Like if you're not putting everything through 17 Hats, then the report is not really going to be as helpful as it could be.
Yeah. Speaking of putting everything through, if you are committed to entering all your transactions here, you would just come to bookkeeping, and then you can have new income, new expense. And if we just do expense, I'll say the Mylar balloons for $24.99. I did it today. You just apply it to a bank account that you may be tracking transactions through. Here's where you select then your category, and I can just start typing. Let's see, expense. Which one am I looking for? You can see all the ones by default. I'm not quite sure, Elizabeth, if they match up to what you're going to end up reporting on your taxes. Maybe you can speak more to that, but
yeah. Are these automatically listed in here, or do you update those? Or do they just exist, the expenses?
You can create your own expense categories. There are a bunch in there by default. These you can see I've done those as custom income categories, but I'm looking back now into the expenses. And so here's the list of all the default category types.
That looks all based on the tax forms. So that if you use the ones that come with the system, you should be good.
Cool. Yep. So then you can categorize and even assign it to a particular project. I think that's more of just like an internal tracking for yourself, less for tax purposes, but you can't even do that. So that's how you would record a transaction, which then will now be in your reports that we've been looking at, if you decide that you are ready to record everything in 17 Hats.
And we did get a question from Jamie. Jamie says, where is it that you can add a service charge without making it a tax line?
Service charge. Oh, I mean, a line item, honestly. Yeah.
So just like.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it's a percentage based, unfortunately, I think the best way to do it is just to calculate it each time. Whereas if it were a tax, then it would calculate for you, but then that's gonna, make it messy. So I would just have let's in fact go to products and services. This is a bunch of random stuff here, but so if you have a delivery fee, maybe this is a percentage based one. Maybe the default price is 0 and you have to calculate it each time, right? Because maybe you have a percentage installation fee for indoor versus outdoor, however you do that. Unfortunately, the best way I think is a line item percentage calculation.
Yeah. So Jamie was saying you can't add that on a quote, the global one. Yeah, I mean, the good news is if you do a line item, you don't have to create a new one each time, right? Like you can just create the same one and then change the pricing to reflect the, the total based on their quote. But yeah, I have, for the folks that do that, I have seen it get messy too if it's being imported into QuickBooks, depending on how that integration is set up for you specifically. So I would keep an eye on that as well.
Yeah, the service
Oh,
fee,
I
you
see.
could calculate it based on like all the standard items they have in their quote, but right when you're offering options and like the choose one and the choose any, you just never know, so you can't really like pre-calculate it, assuming they're gonna pick one or the other. Yeah, there's definitely a limitation there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so that's what we had in terms of kind of our presentation. Do we want to pause the recording and open it up for Q&A?
I'd be glad to if you guys are ready.
Cool.
So